So, Capcom has made a lot of arcade games. It was kind of their thing for a while, wasn't it? I guess it still kind of is, sort of. They even had a home game console that let you take arcade-perfect versions of some of their CPS2 arcade titles home. The Capcom Power System Changer. Never heard of it? Yeah, it sold like garbage. Anyways, while Street Fighter and all manner of beat-em-ups were kicking ass in the arcade, back at home Capcom was more or less dominating with Mega Man. And at some point in the 90s, someone at Capcom had a bright idea. What if they took Mega Man and shoved him into an arcade game? So they did. And clearly it did at least somewhat well, because it got a sequel, and then kind of a weird port to the Neo Geo Pocket Color. Clicky stick. Let's talk about these titles, because I like Mega Man. The games are fun. The Ruby Spears cartoon introduced me to years of therapy. The two arcade games in question are Mega Man The Power Battle and Mega Man 2 The Power Fighters. While they've been re-released a few times over the years, I originally played them via the Mega Man Anniversary Collection for the GameCube. Yeah, that's the compilation that flipped with the A and B buttons do in all the main games. Those titles are hard enough as is, just imagine what it was like beating them with the jump and shoot button swap. And doubly weird is that this issue didn't carry over to the PS2 release, just the GameCube. Back on topic, Mega Man The Power Battle was originally released in arcades in 1995. There were two main variants, one released for Capcom's CPS1 arcade hardware, and a lightly updated version for their CPS2 arcade hardware. That latter one is the version that tends to appear on re-releases. The easiest way to tell the difference between the two is with the soundtrack. From a technical standpoint, the CPS2 version soundtrack just uses higher quality instruments. However, I actually somewhat prefer the CPS1 version. The OST has this kind of smooth chiptune sound to it, if it makes sense, kind of like a weird mix between music for a SNES and a TurboGrafx. As for the gameplay of this game, it's less of a traditional fighting game and more of a standard Mega Man boss rush. You can play as one of three characters, Mega Man himself, and also Proto Man, his brother, and Bass, his main rival, I guess? I don't know, by this point he'd only appeared in Mega Man 7. The main differences between the three are their buster shots, as all can slide or dash, shoot, jump, super jump, and use special weapons that you get from beating each boss. You can also play with a friend, well, in theory anyways, as none of my friends want to play weird arcade games with me, and that makes me kind of sad. Instead of a standard set of 8 robot masters across a main adventure, Power Battle instead features 3 sets of 6 robot masters spread across 3 main modes. I was about to say across 3 different stories, but that's not entirely accurate. What cutscenes you get mostly depends on what character you take control of. Even then, since you can swap characters if and when you get a game over, the real determiner of what cutscenes you get at the end is what character you use to land the final hit on the final boss. The 3 adventure modes are based on Mega Man 1 and 2, Mega Man 3 through 6, and then Mega Man 7. I guess 7 got dedicated mode because it was the newest game in the series at the time. I get the feeling this title was low-key made to promote the various Mega Man games instead of being its own adventure. Let's just dive into the bosses. The first section contains Cutman, Gutsman, Iceman, Crashman, Heatman, and Woodman. The second has Magnet Man, Gemini Man, Dust Man, Gyro Man, Napalm Man, and Plant Man. And the final has Freeze Man, Junk Man, Cloud Man, Slash Man, Shade Man, and Turbo Man. Each of these segments is followed by a 2-stage fortress, with the first stage boss in the first 2 sections being the Yellow Devil from Mega Man 1, and the one in the Mega Man 7-bit being that weird pumpkin mini-boss from Shade Man stage in Mega Man 7. All the modes share the same final boss too. It's his multi-stage boss against everyone's favorite total wiener of a villain, Dr. Wily. It even has a Wily capsule fight at the very end with a countdown timer. Kicking him to the curb before the timer goes down will help you get that sweet, sweet high score, if you're into that. If the whole thing sounds pretty simple, it's because it is. The entire adventure can be beaten in under 15 minutes, and that's solo without really using any special weapons. If you've played Mega Man before, these bosses shouldn't give you a lot of trouble. The one thing that really gets me here is just how many assets are reused throughout the game. The graphics and music are good, and I especially like Crashman's stage since it's the one stage here that actually has a gimmick, what with these tubes you can use to just strategically dodge attacks and jump around. But if you play through all 3 modes, you'll hear a lot of reused music and see several reused stages. Several music tracks especially get replayed, and at times you'll find yourself fighting boss with music in a stage that just don't fit. Even the Mega Man 7 section features some of these issues, and no matter how much I tried to ignore it while playing it, it just kind of bugged me the entire time. My god, this might be the nerdiest complaint I've ever had about a video game. What I'm saying is that if I see Power Battle in an arcade or on a collection, Sure, I'll play it for like 10 to 20 minutes or so, but it's not really one I come back to. A neat curiosity, sure, but it definitely doesn't have enough meat in its bones to make it one I'd replay over and over again, like a lot of Capcom's other arcade titles. Clearly, Capcom were happy with how it came out though, as only a year later, they would take another crack at a Mega Man arcade game. And this time, it featured more content, more story emphasis, and this time what feels like a focus on promoting Mega Man 8, even though it actually doesn't have any bosses from that game, but you'll see what I mean. This is Mega Man 2: The Power Fighters, not to be confused with that other video game, Mega Man 2. And before someone comments about it, I mean the NES one, not the Game Boy one. My god, there are 3 different Mega Man games called Mega Man 2. Right off the bat, along with the original 3 playable characters, Duo from Mega Man 8 is playable here, and his only playable appearance ever. Remember this guy? He's definitely the biggest and beefiest one of the fighters here. Speaking of which, hey, all the characters play differently this time. Mega Man himself is definitely the most standard controlling fighter here. His moveset consists of a charge shot and a dash-esque move. Well, okay, it's a slide. And like the other characters, his move that's assigned to the dash button basically functions as a dodge. Duo's biggest difference from the others is that he has a damaging shoulder tackle and beats enemies up with his hand of justice. Instead of super jumps like in the first game, all the characters now also have special attacks that vary from character to character. This can be done by charging your buster fully and holding the up button before you release. And of course there are special weapons you can get from each boss too, along with a co-op mode. Instead of being divided into modes based on different Mega Man games, Power Fighters is instead divided into 3 different mini-stories with different beats. There are also, once again, different character-specific ending cutscenes. The story modes here are Search for Dr. Wily, Rescue Roll, and Recover the New Part. These names pretty much say everything they need to, with the exception of that last one. In that one, you have to recover a part for a new MacGuffin Dr. Light made at Dr. Wily's soul. Wow, this stuff gets really deep, don't it? Once you reach a certain point in each of these stories, you'll also be given a small buff like a life bar extension or a higher jump, so that's neat. And of course, we've got to talk about the bosses. Once again, the bosses differ in all the story modes. This time, the fortresses even have a different first stage boss, though the final Wily Machine and Wily Capsule fight is the same from mode to mode. Like before, there's a plethora of reused music and graphics and weirdly unfitting stage themes here, because of course there is. In the search for Wily, the bosses are Bubble Man, Heat Man, Shadow Man, Gyro Man, Centaur Man, and Plant Man, with the fortress fight being against the Mad Grinder from Mega Man 7's intro stage. In Rescue Roll, the bosses are Cut Man, Elect Man, Dive Man, Stone Man, Slash Man, and Shade Man, with the fortress boss being the Yellow Devil again, because of course it is. How many times has Capcom reused this guy? He was in Mega Man 1, the Mega Man 3, here, the previous arcade game, there's a Green Devil in Mega Man 8 and Mega Man Base, the Shadow Devil in Mega Man X5, and the yellow guy was also an enemy in Battle and Chase Super Adventure Rockman, Mega Man 11, hell, even Smash Brothers isn't safe from him. At least he's kind of a pushover here. Oh, and the final of these modes, Recover the Part, the bosses are Guts Man, Airman, Quick Man, Gemini Man, Pharaoh Man, Napalm Man, and the Mecha Dragon from Mega Man 2's Fortress, who is also kind of a pushover. Where things really get interesting are in the character-specific endings. Yeah, who knew one of the arcade games that literally takes 15 minutes to beat has a bunch of deep Mega Man lore buried within it. I mean, first off, hey look, they're character-specific endings again. Neat. But this time, they do change slightly if beaten into 2-player mode, which I do think is a nice touch. I mean, Mega Man fights the Vow for everlasting peace no matter what, and Duo just kind of swears to rid the universe of the evil energy from Mega Man 8 before going off to never appear in a video game again, so I guess that's something. However, Proto Man Base's endings are really interesting. In Proto Man's, apparently he has a really fragile core that he doesn't want to be fixed due to having something almost like a proper sense of free will, and apparently fixing that runs the risk of taking that away, and he's the closest robot in the classic series except for maybe Duo, I don't know, we don't really know much about Duo, to being like the Reploids in Mega Man X who can think for themselves. Am I reading too far into this? I'm understanding this right? As for Base, he confronts Dr. Wily, his creator, and they exchange verbal blows. But then Wily basically drops that he doesn't need Base anyways. See, while developing Base, he discovered a new element called Basenium. God, is that really what it's called? That's just fucking stupid. However, it turns out that Dr. Wily is also creating a new robot. One that's so powerful that he's sure he can use it to bend the world to his whims. And it turns out it's Zero from the Mega Man X series. That's actually really interesting. While the whole Dr. Wily is Zero's creator thing would be touched on at numerous points in the X series, I think this is the only time it's ever brought up in one of the classic games. And what an odd place to do it, too. I think odd is the best way to describe both of these games though. More than anything else, both of them are kind of just oddities. Kind of short, definitely fun for a few minutes while you're waiting for your pizza to be ready to pick up or whatever, but they definitely end up feeling a bit light in content, even by classic Mega Man's short standards. But they have had some impact on the series, and some of that impact has ended up in some pretty odd places. Before they got bundled up, devolved into 8-bit and ported to the Neo Geo Pocket Color, the music from them was actually used for the Mega Man Complete Works releases on the PlayStation 1. These were straight ports of the NES games to the PS1, and for whatever reason, they included a navigator mode that pointed you in the right direction to go in these mostly incredibly linear stages. Also, they changed some of the graphics, particularly in the menus, to make them look more PS1-esque and really clashes. In that navigator mode though, the stages used the remix versions of their themes from the arcade games, and the ports of 4 through 6 even gave the stages that didn't have arcade remixes new themes in that same style. I really like how they sound on the whole too. The MM1 through 3 ports weren't so lucky though, and it's really weird. If a stage appears in Mega Man 1 through 3 that just didn't have a remix in arcade games, that just uses the original arcade music, and the clash of the two styles is really jarring. Even weirder is that all 6 of these re-releases later got put on the PS3 and PSP via the PlayStation networks, and had also previously been used in the PS2 version of the Mega Man Anniversary Collection in lieu of the original NES versions. I didn't even know Mega Man 1 through 6 got Japanese exclusive PS1 ports until I got bored with a PSN gift card I'd been given a few Christmases ago. And let me tell ya, I didn't realize that there was an entire menu you had to go through entirely in Japanese before you could even start the game. It was an experience. Speaking of experiencing things, tell me how this sounds.
Rockman, Battle and Fighters!
Really clear, right? This is Rockman Battle and Fighters for the Neo Geo Pocket Color. It's technically a 16-bit handheld, despite giving me some major Game Gear vibes with its sound and color palettes. And it's time for my obligatory mention of that beautifully clicky joystick. Damn, I love that thing. So Battle and Fighters here aims to demake the arcade titles into a portable format. It was also, as you can tell from the Rockman moniker, exclusive to Japan initially, not unlike a later compilation of these two arcade titles released for the PS2 as a budget title. Perhaps the main change is that, though all the campaigns, bosses, and playable characters are retained from the original versions in this NGPC port, it's unfortunately a strictly single-player affair. I mean, there is link cable support, but solely to exchange database info and high scores. That's really kind of lame. Also, that database I mentioned isn't player info, so much as it's a database of info on characters akin to the one in Mega Man and Base. There's info on all 18 Robot Masters from each game, with ones that appear in both having 2 separate entries. But besides that, it's pretty faithful to the original. The only things that stick out to me badly are that Mega Man himself is sporting this blue and white color scheme that looks nothing like a SNES sprite or really any color palette he's sported in any other game. Also, the theme that plays during the Yellow Devil fight in the first game sounds like a completely new piece. Shame, that was my favorite music track in the original. It was a really stellar remix of the first Dr. Wily stage theme from Mega Man 1. Give it a listen if you get the chance, especially the CPS1 rendition. I specifically wanted to mention this port of these games though, because of a bit of news I saw that made me decide to make this video. See this release here? This Neo Geo Pocket Color port that never left Japan of these 2 weird arcade games that hardly anyone played? Yeah, so that got a Nintendo Switch port earlier this year. It's $8 and, again, this port has the content of both arcade games. Really, if you like what you're seeing here, then I'd even say it's worth it at that price, even if no third party has answered my prayers and made Joy-Cons with a clicky stick. So on that note, that's it for today's video. You know the drill. Like, subscribe. Here are my patrons, feel free to join them if you want. More info in the description. I do want to make an announcement though. I'm currently in the midst of my biggest move ever, thanks to how my career has been panning out this past bit. And with this, I've decided to spend some time offline a bit to focus on getting things set up. But don't worry, for come the week of American Thanksgiving, I'm going to have 4 new videos for you. Well, I mean, kind of that week. It'll be starting that Friday, and then there'll be a video every 2 days afterwards. And the last one of those is going to have an incredibly huge bit of news about this channel. So stay tuned, y'all. So on that note, I'm glad I got to talk about some weird Mega Man stuff again today. I hope you had as much fun watching this as I did actually playing through all of them and making it over the course of a rainy afternoon. So on that note, thank you very much for watching, stay classy, and I'll see you next time.